Welcome to our channel where tonight we delve into the darkness of family betrayal and the blinding light of unexpected redemption. Imagine this. After 32 years of pouring love into the home she built with her husband, Eleanor Reed returns from visiting her sister to find her suitcases lined up on the sidewalk. The note attached, "If you want to stay here, we have the garage. Your dear daughter-in-law, Olivia." In one devastating moment, Eleanor discovers the brutal truth the son she raised and the daughter-in-law she welcomed have been systematically erasing her from her own home while she faithfully continues paying their mortgage. Her bedroom, now Olivia's home office, her belongings relegated to cardboard boxes labeled Eleanor's things. But what happens next will leave you speechless. When Eleanor realizes that Michael and Olivia are drowning in debt and secretly planning to sell her beloved home, she makes a decision that transforms her from a discarded mother into the architect of her own magnificent comeback. The moment when the tables turn and her son comes crawling back. Absolutely unforgettable. This isn't just a story about elder displacement. It's a masterclass in reclaiming your power when the world thinks you should quietly disappear. Eleanor's journey reminds us all that it's never too late to stand tall and say, "I am not invisible." If you've ever felt overlooked, undervalued, or pushed aside, Eleanor's triumph will set your soul on fire. Subscribe now for more stories that will move you to tears and then lift you higher than before. Ayun. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to reinvent yourself after betrayal? Where are you tuning in from tonight, now? Settle in as we witness how one woman transforms her garage exile into the most empowering chapter of her life. I felt my heart slam against my ribs the very instant I saw it, a public post on a job-seeking forum featuring my own face. The headline read, "My newly retired mother needs to stay busy. Hire her for anything cooking, cleaning, tutoring. She's got nowhere else to be." Even before I opened the description, a jolt of shock rippled through my entire body, as if I'd been shoved headfirst into frigid water. This was supposed to be my restful golden age, my time to enjoy life's second bloom. Instead, I found my name, my photograph taken at my teacher retirement banquet of all places being offered around like cheap labor, and the person responsible, my only child, my beloved son, or at least the man I used to think of as beloved. I'm Evelyn Pierce, a 67-year-old retired educator with short, elegantly layered silver hair that gleams under the sun. For 3 decades, I shaped young minds in the math classroom of a small-town public high school. After my ex-husband, Harvey, left our family years ago, I poured every ounce of my soul into raising our son, Jonah. I worked extra hours, saved every penny, even sold off heirlooms to ensure he would have a shot at graduate school. When I retired, Jonah persuaded me to move from my peaceful Providence house to a cramped apartment in Boston, insisting he wanted me close. "You've earned your rest," he'd said, flashing that dazzling smile I used to find so comforting. Like a fool, I believed him. But not a week after I got here, Jonah, who sports a carefully trimmed fade that he claims keeps him office-ready, handed me a list of household chores. Then he lined up tutoring jobs under the guise of favors for his boss, paying me a pittance that didn't even match the actual rate. It felt more like I'd been lured into a sweatshop. The final straw came when I stumbled upon that job-hunting forum post. My whole retirement had been reduced to a bullet-point resume and a humiliating label. "She's no freeloader, just bored and wants to help." Betrayal lanced through me like a blade. Never, in my worst nightmares, did I imagine I'd end up as cheap labor for the son I'd loved more than life. In that infuriating post, Jonah described me as old but capable, listing my decades as a math teacher, my housekeeping experience, and the fact that I was willing to commute up to 2 hours for work. Comments beneath it were blistering total strangers condemning Jonah for exploiting a senior, telling him he was heartless. But his follow up replies only made it worse. My mom's always done housework. She's used to it, he wrote, and retirement's boring. Right as if that justified everything. The audacity of it robbed me of breath. Had I really raised such an unfeeling child? I scrolled further, trembling with a mix of sorrow and outrage. People from all walks of life slammed him, calling him a parasite. My stomach twisted, tears brimming. Then I remembered the tutoring gig Jonah had arranged for me the previous day. I'd been sent to teach a boy named Tyson, who had a flair of chaos about him, hair dyed bright green on one side and shaved on the other, always tapping his foot while rolling his eyes at me. I was promised $30 an hour. Upon arrival, though, Tyson's mother seemed baffled. She insisted they'd prepaid Jonah at a rate of $100 per hour for a seasoned senior teacher. In that moment, every piece of the puzzle clicked. Jonah had lied about the pay, pocketing the difference as though he were my pimp. By the time I got back to his place that night, I was seething. When I confronted Jonah about the discrepancy, he became defensive, claiming it was simply a misunderstanding. Then his wife, Carla, chimed in. Carla has a neat, shoulder-length wavy cut that she's always fussing with, as though personal appearance were her full-time occupation. She tried to smooth things over, mentioning how I could do them a favor so that Jonah's boss would be pleased, how I should be glad to keep my mind sharp in retirement. Each word felt like acid on my tongue. I wanted to scream. I've spent my life working. I'm not a machine that needs constant labor to stay functional. But I swallowed my fury, determined to keep it together until I got the truth from them both. That night, I overheard Carla ranting in the living room. Jonah, your mother's lived here for a week and already expects us to handle everything. Do you see her offering to cook or clean without being asked? She's acting like she's a guest at a hotel, and we're paying Boston mortgages. We don't feed extra mouths. The words cut me to the core. I couldn't believe how quickly Carla had turned me into a burden. Didn't she realize the only reason I ended up on their doorstep was because Jonah begged me, claiming he wanted to be closer, that he missed me? Jonah responded in a softer tone. Yet it was no comfort. We just need her to pitch in, that's all, he said. Look, once we sell her old house in Providence, we can clear out our mortgage. It's a win-win. She'll do the housework and tutoring, so we save on a nanny and a maid. Then, once we have kids, she can look after them and we'll never have to hire daycare. My entire body shook with indignation. So that was the master plan, turned me into a live-in nanny, a cleaner, a tutor, and funnel the money from my home sale into their account. They'd been counting on my retirement nest egg to patch up their finances, all while complaining about feeding an extra mouth. I couldn't take any more. I wanted to leap off the bed, stomp out there, and lay into them with every ounce of heartbreak roiling in me. But I waited. Maybe I needed to know the full extent of their scheme. Another wave of revelation hit. Jonah must have posted about me on social media, not only for short-term tutoring gigs, but also to build some twisted following, garner sympathy, maybe even endorsements. The thought made my blood run cold. Was any of his affection real, or was I just a pawn in a bigger plan? At dawn, I packed my suitcase in a silent fury. By the time they woke up, I announced I was leaving for Providence, claiming I felt ill. Jonah panicked, calling me ungrateful and dramatic. Carla just rolled her eyes. But I was beyond caring. I'd never been so crushed, so utterly convinced I was being used by the one person I'd sacrificed everything for. I arrived back at my old home in Providence that evening, stepping into the familiar warmth of the creaking floors and the scent of fresh linen. This house, though modest, was my sanctuary for over 2 decades. I'd been on the verge of selling it at Jonah's encouragement. Thank goodness I hadn't signed the final papers. Because, as fate would have it, an unexpected windfall was on the horizon. Just as I was unpacking, my phone buzzed. It was my sister, Miriam, breathless with excitement. "Evelyn," she nearly shouted. "Rumor has it the whole neighborhood's getting demolished for a new development project. They're buying out homes at sky-high prices. Don't sign anything without hearing them out. You could get $500,000, maybe more." My jaw dropped. $500,000 for my little house that was once designated as faculty housing near the old high school. I felt a dizzy jolt of relief. Suddenly, every malicious word about me being an extra mouth or a financial drain became laughable. Jonah and Carla had wanted to use my house money for themselves. They'd have done anything to get their hands on it. Now it was crystal clear that returning to Providence wasn't a defeat, it was a rescue from the very jaws of betrayal. I let out a long, shaky laugh into the quiet hallway. All my life, I'd believed that family was an unbreakable bond, that you gave to your children without question, trusting they'd care for you in your twilight years. Yet Jonah's actions had taught me a grim lesson. Some people see only dollar signs when they look at loved ones. I wasn't going to be that naive again. The next morning, I strolled through the neighborhood, noticing the bright orange markings on the sidewalks, the surveyors with their measuring tools. Word spread fast. A big company planned to tear down our old houses to build a commercial plaza, possibly apartments. They were offering handsome compensation to every homeowner. My head spun with the sheer magnitude of it. This was no rumor, this was real. In a single stroke, my precarious financial future had transformed into a firm, well-funded foundation. I was free to enjoy a peaceful retirement on my terms. With this news settling into my bones, I decided to call Jonah part of me, foolish or not. Wanted to see if he'd rejoice in the good fortune on my behalf. Maybe I still clung to a shred of hope that my son's betrayal had been a misunderstanding, that deep down he cared about me beyond the money. The phone rang and rang until it clicked over to voicemail. No response. I tried Carla's phone. The call went straight to voicemail, too. After the third attempt, I gave up. My chest felt heavy, yet a tiny voice inside urged, "It's better this way. Let them wonder where you went and what you're planning. Let them stew in the silence." 2 days later, I woke to a barrage of text messages from Jonah. "Mom, sorry I missed your calls. Carla and I have been busy. We heard you left. Are you okay?" Each message was dripping with faux concern. Then the group chat with our relatives lit up. Jonah had posted a carefully cropped photo of me leaving Boston with a suitcase, accompanied by some sob story about Mom decided to leave us despite our efforts to help her adapt. She's lonely and confused. Furious, I typed a response. Confused is right confused as to why my own son is milking me like a cash cow, but I paused, inhaled deeply, and erased the message. There was no point battling him publicly in front of relatives who only saw the surface. Instead, I posted a calm reply. "I'm fine. I prefer to be in my own home. That's all." Jonah's reaction was swift. He DM'd me privately. "Mom, you're overreacting. We said some things in the heat of the moment. Come back. We'll talk it through." Another text followed Carla's pregnant. My heart lurched. A grandchild. That complicated everything. I'd always wanted to be a grandmother, to share stories and lullabies, to pass on the love my own mother gave me. But as I stared at that exclamation, I felt nothing but a numb ache. Was it genuine news, or just another manipulation to lure me back under their thumb? The heartbreak of doubting my own son's motives weighed on me like a stone. Still, the possibility of new life was no small matter. Could I truly turn my back on my future grandchild? even if their parents had broken my trust that same evening. A knock rattled my front door. When I opened it, there stood Jonah and Carla, each wearing forced smiles. Carla's wavy hair was styled a bit differently, soft curls pinned back with a silver barrette, as if she wanted to appear angelic or demure, yet her eyes darted around anxiously. Jonah's short fade, meticulously gelled, looked as though he'd spent hours in front of the mirror, hoping to project a confident front. Jonah held out a plastic bag of groceries. "Mom," he murmured, "we've come to apologize." Carla stepped forward, resting a tentative hand on her belly. "You're going to be a grandmother, Evelyn," she said, her voice trembling, "and we want that baby to know you." I should have felt some flicker of joy, but all I sensed was a deeply ingrained doubt. Their arrival felt carefully choreographed, like they'd rehearsed how to disarm me. Before I could speak, Jonah launched into a half-baked confession. "Look, I messed up trying to get you those side jobs. I panicked about the mortgage and our upcoming bills. We're drowning. Mom, we just need a little help." His words spilled out so smoothly that I wondered if he'd practiced them in the car ride over. Then Carla added, "Think of the baby. It's better for everyone if we live together as a family. You'll have company, and we'll have peace of mind." Like clockwork, they pivoted to the real request. "If you sell this house and transfer those funds to us, we can ensure you'll always have a roof over your head. We'll convert a room in our condo just for you. You'll never have to worry about anything again." My blood ran cold. Not a single mention of my happiness, only the usual theme: them needing my money, them benefiting from my free labor. The baby, ironically, was the perfect emotional ransom. Silence stretched between us. Finally, I told them calmly, "I haven't decided yet. Let me think." I could almost taste their desperation when they realized I wasn't going to just hand over my windfall. By the next morning, Jonah and Carla's orchestrations took a more calculated turn. Instead of the gentle coaxing, Jonah texted me a whole plan for my retirement. He suggested I could keep busy by tutoring 3 kids from his office. He included their addresses and schedules, plus a line about me receiving a fair rate of $25 an hour. That was still nowhere near the $100 he'd pocketed on my first tutoring gig. Right below that, Carla chimed in, urging me to see a real estate agent. She recommended someone who, no doubt, would undervalue my house so Jonah could purchase it through a proxy. It all reeked of manipulation. Hoping for some clarity, I confided in my sister Miriam over coffee at a local cafe. Miriam, sporting a close-cropped curly hairstyle that bounced around her warm, open face, listened intently, her brown eyes darkening with anger. "Evelyn, they're using you. Plain and simple." She shook her head. "A child's gratitude should come naturally. They shouldn't treat their mother like an indentured servant." Her words echoed in my mind. Had Jonah lost all genuine affection, or had he never learned true empathy to begin with? I remembered him as a kind boy with a bright smile, always hugging me after I returned from late-night tutoring sessions. But people change, and not always for the better. While Miriam and I sipped our lattes, we weighed the possibility that Jonah might come around if I set firm boundaries. I decided to draft a short letter, clarifying my stance. I would not sell my home until the official compensation from the city came through. Once I had that, I'd consider buying a smaller condo in Providence. As for helping with the baby, I'm happy to provide love. I wrote, but not full-time child rearing. I typed and retyped the words, trying to keep the letter calm yet resolute. That evening, I emailed it to Jonah and Carla. Their response arrived within minutes, rage-filled paragraphs about how I was abandoning them in their time of need, complete with guilt trips referencing the unborn child. My heart pounded, but I stood firm. For the first time in my life, I refused to apologize for protecting my own well-being. Days passed in a strange standoff. Jonah and Carla stayed in Boston, but they unleashed a torrent of phone calls and texts, alternating between sweet talking and subtle threats. One moment, Carla claimed her pregnancy was difficult and she couldn't handle it alone. The next, Jonah played the I'm your only child card, reminding me that if I wanted any relationship with my future grandchild, I'd have to reconcile with them on their terms. It was manipulative whiplash. Then came the real bombshell. Jonah's father, Harvey, emerged from the shadows. I hadn't spoken to Harvey in years. He vanished after our divorce. And rumor had it he'd lost most of his money in a shady business deal. But suddenly, he was in contact with Jonah, promising him a quick $50,000 loan if Jonah would legally change his last name back to Harvey's lineage. My ex-husband was shamelessly trying to buy Jonah's loyalty, right when Jonah realized I might not fund his every desire. The irony was thick enough to slice. Trying to keep my head clear, I took a walk through the neighborhood. Bright red eviction warnings and demolition flyers were taped to several houses. The entire block buzzed with conversations about buyouts, rumored sums, and the timeline for official offers. Even though I felt anxious about the big changes, a sense of hope glimmered. My old home, too long seen as worthless, was about to become a golden ticket for my comfortable retirement. On my way back, I found a letter slipped under my door. It was from Carla's mother, Irene, who wore her peppery hair in a severe, outdated beehive style. She'd always looked at me with an air of condescension, as if believing Carla had married beneath her. The letter was a rant accusing me of laziness and cold-heartedness, insisting that once the baby arrived, I'd regret not throwing myself at my son's feet. Irene threatened to take legal action if I refused to support Carla financially, citing some imaginary moral obligation. I tore the letter in half and tossed it. I was done playing the victim in this twisted family drama. In my heart, a new flame ignited, fierce, protective, and entirely dedicated to my own self-respect. I thought the intimidation would end at hollow threats, but I underestimated Irene's audacity. 2 days later, she stormed into a dance class I'd joined to keep active, a bright, airy studio where I practiced waltzes and tangos with a group of retirees. My dance partner, Graham, an amiable retiree with silver sideburns and a neat, classic haircut, was helping me perfect my pivots when Irene barged in, shrieking like a banshee. "Evelyn Pierce, how dare you live it up dancing while my daughter struggles in Boston?" Her voice echoed off the studio mirrors, halting the music as everyone stared. Before I could respond, she lunged, grabbing my arm with surprising force. Graham immediately stepped forward to protect me, only to be met with a barrage of insults. Irene accused me of abandoning Jonah, of pretending to be sick to garner sympathy, of smiling and living extravagantly while Carla was pregnant and emotionally distraught. My fellow dancers tried to intervene, but Irene's words spewed like venom. In a calm but firm voice, I said, "Take your accusations elsewhere. I do not answer to you." Irene's eyes blazed. "She's your daughter-in-law. She deserves your financial support." She spat. "You have money. What kind of mother refuses to help?" At that, I'd had enough. I turned to the studio owner, a wiry man with close-cropped hair, and asked him to call the police if Irene refused to leave. In a dramatic flourish, she tore at her hair, loosening that tight beehive style so it half collapsed and sank to her knees, wailing about how her poor daughter needed me. It was pure theatrics. My cheeks burned with humiliation and fury. Graham gently placed a hand on my shoulder, whispering that I wasn't at fault. Irene's meltdown was all on her. Eventually, a pair of officers showed up, coaxed Irene to her feet, and led her out. Her shrieking continued until the studio door slammed shut behind them. Silence held the room in a grip. The irony almost made me laugh. I had spent decades forging a path for my family, only to be harassed in public for not giving enough. How had it come to this? Yet I knew, deep down, this was only the beginning of a new wave of drama. Sure enough, the next morning, bright flyers were plastered all over the dance studio's entrance and my front gate. Amigos. Giant red letters spelled out vile accusations. Evelyn Pierce is a selfish mother who deserts her pregnant daughter-in-law. Some had cartoonish illustrations of me lounging on piles of money while a crying baby hovered in a thought bubble. It was laughably childish, but humiliating all the same. When I peeled them down, I discovered the paper was thick and glossy. Someone had spent real money to print them. Irene's handiwork, no doubt. My neighbors gawked as I hurriedly tore the flyers down. One elderly woman clucked her tongue and muttered, "I always thought your son was a nice boy. Why is all this happening?" I ignored her pitying stare and marched inside, my anger thrumming in my veins. That afternoon, I decided I'd had enough. I marched to the local police precinct and filed a complaint against Irene. I presented photos of the flyers, along with witness statements from the dance studio fiasco. Two officers in crisp uniforms listened sympathetically, reminding me that if the harassment continued, I could pursue a restraining order. Irene must have panicked upon receiving a call from the police, because soon after, Carla showed up at my house, tear-streaked and sporting a hastily pinned bun, her waves subdued under bobby pins. She dropped to her knees, sobbing that her mother overreacted, that they'd removed the flyers, that everything was just a misunderstanding. "Please, Evelyn, I just want us to be a family." She wept. The spectacle of a pregnant woman crying at my doorstep drew the neighbors' curious eyes again. Feeling cornered, I ushered her inside to avoid more gossip. That's when she tried her final gambit, pulling out medical papers confirming her first trimester, tearfully moaning that stress could harm the baby. "You don't want our child to suffer, do you?" she asked, voice trembling. My chest tightened, guilt warring with outrage. But then a call flashed on her phone, and I glimpsed the name Irene on the screen before Carla declined it. Enough was enough. I refused to fall for any more manipulation. I told her calmly to leave. A week later, I found a lawyer. If Jonah and Carla, along with Irene, persisted in this harassment, I needed legal muscle at my side. The lawyer, Ms. Porter, was a sharp-eyed woman with short, spiky hair, exuding confidence in her crisp business suit. She heard my story in silence, occasionally jotting notes. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "Evelyn, you hold all the cards you own your house free and clear. You have a potential $500,000 payout coming, and you're not legally obligated to give them a cent. If they keep harassing you, we can escalate this to a serious lawsuit." Relief washed through me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't alone, that I had a shield of my own. Ms. Yen. Porter helped me draft a cease and desist letter, which we mailed to Jonah, Carla, and Irene. The letter was stern yet formal, warning that further defamation or attempts at harassment could lead to legal consequences. We included photos of the slanderous flyers and the statements from my dance studio friends. I half expected them to ignore it, but to my surprise, the smear campaign cooled down for a while. At least, during this lull, I focused on the upcoming demolition deal. City officials confirmed that my neighborhood would indeed be purchased and redeveloped. Several of my neighbors already negotiated higher buyout amounts. My heart fluttered with excitement. I'd be financially set for life. I found myself daydreaming about traveling, exploring museums in Europe. Maybe even treating myself to a scenic train trip through the Rockies. Retirement could finally mean freedom, not subservience. Then, late one evening, my phone chimed. It was a text from Jonah Mom. Can we meet? I want to settle things. No more drama. Against my better judgment, I agreed, choosing a public cafe where prying eyes might keep everything civil. Jonah arrived looking disheveled, the sides of his fade grown out, as if he'd neglected basic grooming. His eyes darted around nervously. He confessed that he was facing disciplinary action at work because his boss's wife had learned about our pay discrepancy fiasco. Word had spread that Jonah pocketed money meant for me. They suspended me, he muttered, tapping the table with shaky fingers. I listened silently as Jonah poured out a sob story. No salary, mortgages piling up, Carla's prenatal care costing more than they expected. He was desperate. Mom, he said, tears glazing his eyes, if you help us out now, once the baby's here, we'll all live happily together. I studied the trembling lip, the haunted look. Part of me wanted to reach across and hold my son's hand, but another part remembered how easily he'd lied, stolen, and manipulated me. I said nothing, letting him stew in the silence. Finally, Jonah tried a different angle. Even if you can't forgive me, think of the baby. Do you want your grandchild to grow up in poverty? The emotional ransom tactic again. I sipped my coffee, took a measured breath, and replied, I can't trust you. His face crumpled. I added, but I'm willing to see if your actions, not words, can mend some of the damage. I have my conditions. Eyes wide with cautious hope, Jonah asked, what conditions? So I laid them out. I would not sell him my house directly, nor would I give him any portion of the demolition payout until it was actually in my bank. If he truly needed help, he should find honest work, repay the money he'd stolen from my tutoring jobs, and stop demanding that I sign over my pension or savings. Prove to me you're not just after my finances, I said. Show me you're the son I raised, the one who used to bring me daisies from the yard when I was sick. Jonah swallowed hard, nodding as if in agreement, but I sensed a flicker of anger behind his eyes. Like a wounded animal, we parted ways with a strained hug. The next day, a message appeared in the family group chat, proud to announce Carla's pregnancy is going well. We'll be moving forward with positivity. Some relatives chimed in with hearts and cheers. I remained silent. I knew the real battles were far from over. Things seemed to settle for a short spell. Jonah stopped bombarding me with messages. Carla vanished from my doorstep. The flyers disappeared. My dance studio resumed its cheerful lessons, and I even joined a local gardening club. I nurtured basil, rosemary, and lavender in small pots on my porch, finding solace in the slow, steady growth of living things. For a brief, blissful moment, I believed the storm had passed. Then, one late afternoon, I returned home from a gardening club meeting to find an ambulance outside my house. Panic seized me. Rushing up the path, I discovered Irene lying on the sidewalk, clutching her chest dramatically, while Carla hovered over her, tearful. A paramedic examined Irene, who moaned that she'd collapsed from stress after traveling all the way from Boston to plead for my mercy. My first reaction was a surge of worry. Someone was in medical distress. Then common sense kicked in. Why was Irene here? Why collapse right outside my home? Timed so perfectly with my return, Carla spotted me and lunged forward. Evelyn, we needed to see you. My mother's health has deteriorated from all this tension. She wants to beg your forgiveness. Even the paramedic's eyebrow arched in suspicion. Something about Irene's performance reeked of theatrics, her carefully rumpled blouse, her hair undone just enough to look pitiful. the dramatic gasps whenever I tried to ask a question. In a measured tone, I told the paramedic, please take her to the hospital if she's truly unwell. Irene's eyes snapped open, and she shrieked, I'm not going to the hospital. I'm fine. I just need rest. Then she glared daggers at me. Carla stepped in quickly. We're not here for a scene. We just want to invite you to a baby shower next month. We hoped you'd accept if we asked in person. I stared at the invitation Carla thrust at me, a pastel card with baby footprints. My name was scrawled in a glittery font. My chest tightened. On one hand, a baby shower is supposed to be a moment of joy. On the other, it felt like a manipulative trap to corner me in front of extended family and guilt me into financial support. Summoning all my composure, I said quietly, thank you. I'll think about it. After the ambulance left with an evidently unneeded passenger, since Irene magically recovered enough to storm off under her own power, I retreated inside, exhaling in frustration. My phone buzzed. A new group chat had formed, one including me, Jonah, Carla, and Irene. The group's name made my stomach churn. Baby's Future Committee. Inside were posts about baby shower arrangements, gift lists, and proposed financial pledges. Jonah suggested I could cover half of the baby's nursery costs. Carla wrote about the child eventually needing private tutoring and how Grandma Evelyn is such a talented teacher. Irene chimed in with statements about how we should pool resources because it's all in the family. I stared at these messages, marveling at their nerve. No apology, no mention of prior harassment, just a brazen pivot to baby finance. My blood boiled, but I remembered Ms. Porter's advice: remain calm, keep records, let them incriminate themselves if necessary. So I typed a simple reply, I'm not ready to discuss finances. Please respect my boundaries. Carla responded with a teary emoji, while Irene fired back, boundaries don't exist where family is concerned. I sighed, muted the chat, and scrolled through pictures of my newly sprouted herbs, seeking any small slice of peace. Meanwhile, the city's demolition plan moved fast. Inspectors visited my street, verifying property lines and noting the potential for commercial construction. The sum being floated around for my house was around $520,000, a life-changing amount. I quietly prepared the necessary documents, double-checking the title was in my name alone. Jonah and Carla had zero claim to it, no matter how loudly they insisted otherwise. Then, one evening, I got a phone call from a local reporter who'd heard rumors of friction between certain homeowners and their families over the buyout money. She wanted my story. I politely declined, but the exchange left me uneasy. How many people out there were going through a similar ordeal? Children, once cherished, turning on their elderly parents the minute money entered the picture. Part of me wanted to speak up, to expose the rampant exploitation seniors face. But another part recoiled. I wasn't ready to see my pain splashed in headlines. I needed closure, not an audience. As the baby shower date loomed, I felt an uncomfortable swirl of dread. Should I go? The thought of facing a room full of extended family and Carla's friends, all expecting me to fulfill some grand maternal role, twisted my gut. Yet not going seemed equally damning, as if I'd be confirming all the vicious rumors that I was an uncaring mother. After days of indecision, I chose to attend very briefly. I had no intention of signing any checks or discussing money, just making a polite appearance. The event took place at a rented hall in Boston, decorated with pastel streamers and large cutout letters spelling baby. Carla wore a flowing mauve dress that framed her growing belly, her wavy hair pinned back with glittery clips. Jonah greeted me at the door with an uneasy smile. At least a dozen relatives bustled around. Cooing and exclaiming over Carla's pregnancy glow, I tried to keep to the edges of the crowd, exchanging polite pleasantries. But there was an undercurrent of tension. I caught the side eyes and hushed whispers. I even overheard Carla telling one of her friends, I hope Evelyn steps up today. She's been difficult. The friend nodded sympathetically, throwing me a disapproving glance. My cheeks heated. After a few awkward games like guessing baby names and blindfolded diaper races, Carla's mother, Irene, took center stage with a microphone. We're here to celebrate our precious baby-to-be, she began, voice trembling with faux emotion, and to ensure Carla and Jonah have all the support they need. We invite family members to pledge any contributions they can because in times like this, we stand together. Applause rippled through the room. Then Irene singled me out, beckoning me forward. My heart hammered. And of course, she said, eyes gleaming, we know Carla's wonderful mother-in-law. Evelyn has something special prepared. I blinked, my ears roaring. The entire room stared at me. This was the ambush. The moment they expected me to declare some jaw-dropping check or promise to pay for future schooling. My blood chilled with anger. Still, I forced a serene smile, walked up to the microphone, and said, Thank you, but all I have for my grandchild is unconditional love. No money, no strings. Murmurs spread. Irene's face tightened. Carla's smile wavered. Jonah avoided my gaze. I offered a polite nod and stepped off the small stage, feeling their eyes brimming with disapproval. I left the baby shower right after that, didn't linger for cake or gifts. I could sense a storm brewing, and I wanted no part of it. By the time I got back to Providence, my phone was exploding with group chat messages. Some were from supportive relatives who admired my calm stance. Others were from Carla's side, blasting me as heartless. Meanwhile, Jonah sent me a single message. Thanks for humiliating us. Humiliate them. I blinked at my screen in disbelief. They'd invited me to a baby shower purely to corner me into a public pledge. I refused, politely, without causing a scene. Yet I was the one who'd humiliated them. The twisted logic was maddening. But it also underscored what I'd suspected all along, no matter what I did. If I didn't hand over money, I was the villain. A few days later, I woke to find my mailbox stuffed with envelopes containing bizarre, threatening notes. Crude scrawls read, Stop being stingy or you'll die alone. And family means sharing. Remember that. My hands shook as I flipped through them. The final one had a photo of a cemetery plot with a typed caption, You're almost there anyway. Chills crept across my spine. I rushed inside and called Miss Porter, who instructed me to file a new police report. This was no longer petty harassment. This was a threat. The police arrived, took my statement, and bagged the notes as evidence. They seemed concerned, especially by the ominous tone of the last one. While they couldn't confirm it was Jonah or Carla, it could be an overzealous relative or friend. It all stemmed from the same toxic well. My mind whirled. Had Jonah or Carla reached the point of threatening my life for money? Or was it Irene? Or even someone else who believed I was letting the baby suffer? The entire situation had escalated beyond reason. That evening, my sister Miriam stayed with me, both for moral support and out of genuine fear for my safety. We double-checked the locks and discussed installing security cameras. Even with Ms. Porter and the police involved, I felt a suffocating dread. If this was what being a good mother entailed, it was time to sever ties. Despite the threats, the demolition plans pressed forward. Within 2 weeks, the official buyout offer arrived, boasting a tidy $520,000 for my property. My neighbors and I met with the city officials to finalize terms. I was handed a contract to sign on the dotted line. Standing there in the city office, pen in hand, I felt years of exhaustion lifting from my shoulders. No matter what Jonah or Carla pulled next, I would have the financial security to live life on my own terms. I signed and walked out with the contract. My future looked brighter than it had in decades. Buoyed by relief, I decided to celebrate. I booked myself a weekend trip to a nearby coastal retreat, an inn perched on the edge of rocky shores. The briny air, the crash of waves, everything felt cleansing. Sitting on the inn's porch, wrapped in a shawl against the salty breeze, I allowed myself to dream of a simpler life free from manipulative children and meddling in-laws. My calm reverie, however, was shattered on the second evening. My phone buzzed incessantly. Against my better judgment, I picked up. It was Jonah, voice trembling. "Mom," he said, I need to talk." Something in his tone gripped me, a desperation that felt oddly genuine. Carla's mother has gone off the rails. She's pushing us to do something drastic. My heart kicked in my chest. I suspected that drastic might be code for more intimidation or violence. Still, I asked him to clarify. Jonah revealed that Irene had threatened to make sure I coughed up the money, even if it meant forging legal documents. She'd apparently boasted about finding a lawyer who could declare me mentally incompetent so Jonah and Carla could take over my finances. Jonah sounded uneasy, possibly even remorseful. "I don't want to do that, Mom," he insisted, voice cracking. "But Carla is listening to her mother. I'm stuck between them. Please, just talk to us. Work something out so none of this gets out of hand." I closed my eyes, inhaling the sharp sea air, torn between pity for my son and the gnawing awareness that he'd put me in this position in the first place. I told Jonah I'd consider meeting to discuss the situation, but I refused to do so at their Boston condo or my home. We agreed on a neutral location, a quaint bistro halfway between our cities. If I was walking into a trap, I wanted it to be in a public place with witnesses. As I drove there, tension gnawed at my stomach. Part of me yearned for resolution for Jonah to realize this was all madness and to let me live in peace. Another part stayed vigilant, sure that more deceit was around the corner. Jonah was already seated when I arrived, looking worn and thinner than I remembered, his neatly trimmed fade a bit ragged. Carla slouched beside him, arms folded over her belly. Her hair, once wavy and glossy, was pulled back into a harsh ponytail, revealing tired eyes. For a fleeting moment, compassion stirred in me. She was pregnant, likely stressed. Then I recalled the threats, the scheme to declare me incompetent, and my sympathy cooled. I took a seat, placing my handbag deliberately on the chair next to me, blocking Carla from sliding over. Jonah wasted no time, launching into a faltering apology about the baby shower fiasco. Carla glared at her water glass. "We thought you'd be happy to make an announcement," she muttered, shrugging. My lips tightened. "An announcement about how I'd fund your life?" I asked. Voice low. She flinched, and Jonah sighed. "We didn't handle it right," he admitted. "But we can fix this if we all cooperate." My patience was threadbare. Cooperate how I demanded. Jonah turned to Carla. She hesitated, then rummaged in her purse, pulling out a folder. Inside was a typed agreement stating that I would voluntarily gift them $300,000 from the buyout, plus monthly support from my pension. My eyes nearly bulged from their sockets. "Are you serious?" I hissed. Carla avoided my gaze. "It's just to ensure the baby's future," she whispered. I closed the folder and slid it back. "Absolutely not," I said, my voice as cold as the winter wind. Jonah's anger flared. "If you don't, my mother-in-law is prepared to go to court," Carla said, her tone clipped. Jonah nodded, adding, "She'll say you're unstable, that you can't manage money." I stared at them, heart pounding. Go ahead, I challenged. Try it. Their faces paled at my defiant tone. Carla's mouth parted, then snapped shut. Jonah's eyes flickered with panic. He seemed to realize I meant every word. I would not be bullied. Without another glance, I grabbed my handbag and stood. You asked for this meeting, I said quietly. If you just want to threaten me, we're done. Just as I turned to leave, Carla's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and let out a shaky breath. It's my mom, she murmured, pressing it to her ear. Suddenly, her eyes widened in alarm. She whispered furiously, Why would you do that? Overhearing snippets. I caught references to Evelyn's cameras and hospital. My heart lurched with a terrifying guess. Did Irene break into my home? I stared at Carla in horror, but she ended the call abruptly, tossing the phone in her bag. Carla shoved her chair back. She's done something. She stammered. We have to go. Jonah leapt up too, looking rattled. Before he could say anything, I demanded, What did Irene do? Carla shook her head, tears welling. I'm not sure. She said something about catching you in a health scam. A cold wave of dread hit me. Health scam? Was Irene forging documents to claim I was mentally or physically unfit? I rushed out, leaving them behind, and drove straight home to Providence with my pulse hammering. Upon arrival, I found no forced entry, but my door was slightly ajar. Fear spiked. Inside, a single lamp burned, illuminating a heartbreaking sight. My living room was ransacked, drawers open, papers strewn across the floor. I searched frantically. My prescription medication was missing. So were a stack of older medical records from my teaching years. On the dining table lay a note scrawled in red marker. It won't matter soon. Trembling, I phoned the police. They arrived swiftly, taking photos, dusting for prints. Though I had no direct evidence, it was Irene. The malicious intent was undeniable. Ms. Porter showed up soon after, outraged on my behalf. She repeated an earlier suggestion. You need a hidden surveillance system, something they can't easily disable. It struck me then the stakes were higher than ever. It was no longer about money. These people were willing to commit crimes, perhaps even endanger my life, to secure what they wanted. I didn't waste time. Within 48 hours, I hired a security company. They installed small, discreet cameras in the corners of my living room, kitchen, and hallway. Battery backups ensured they'd keep recording even if the power was cut. As a finishing touch, I put a visible camera large, dome-shaped above the front door. Let them see that one. Let them think they'd thwarted me by disabling it. Meanwhile, the hidden ones would capture every detail. Sure enough, less than a week later, my phone buzzed with an alert. Motion detected. I was at the grocery store stocking up on supplies. By the time I reached home, the living room showed signs of intrusion again, but this time I had the upper hand. Rushing to my locked office upstairs, I played back the hidden camera feed on my laptop. There she was, Irene, in a long coat, rummaging through my drawers. She found my new prescription pills, emptied them, and replaced them with identical-looking capsules from her coat pocket. My heart pounded as I watched the footage. She was trying to poison me or alter my medications. If I'd taken those pills, who knows what might have happened. Shaking with rage and terror, I called Ms. Porter, who contacted the police. Within half an hour, officers were at my home. We played the footage for them. They recognized Irene from my prior complaints. This was clear, undeniable evidence of attempted harm. An arrest warrant was issued. By evening, Irene was in custody, shrieking about being framed as they escorted her away in handcuffs. I tried to breathe, to steady my nerves, but a nauseating swirl of adrenaline coursed through me. The knowledge that Carla's mother had just tried to tamper with my medication, it was nearly too much to process. In the chaos of the arrest, Carla appeared, eyes wide, belly prominent, sobbing that Irene had acted on her own. Jonah slunk behind her, pale and speechless. I refused to speak to either of them. The sheer gall of it, they had brought me to this precipice of danger. I planned to press charges to the fullest extent. Enough was enough. This wasn't just emotional manipulation anymore. It was a threat to my life, and I wasn't about to let them walk away. As the legal gears turned, the police questioned Jonah and Carla about Irene's role, trying to determine whether they were co-conspirators. Meanwhile, I visited my doctor to confirm my medication was safe. Thankfully, I hadn't ingested any tampered pills. I was spared whatever harmful outcome Irene had planned. Still, the mental toll was immense. I couldn't sleep, lying awake imagining footsteps creeping through my house. Ms. Porter filed for a restraining order against Jonah, Carla, and Irene on my behalf. With Irene behind bars, I expected Jonah and Carla might go into hiding, but Jonah unexpectedly showed up at my doorstep one morning, looking disheveled. I refused to let him in, stepping outside to speak on the porch so my cameras would record everything. He broke down, tears carving tracks down his cheeks. "Mom, I didn't know she'd do that." He pleaded, "Carla's a wreck. We never wanted to hurt you." In that moment, a flicker of empathy surfaced within me. Merci. Maybe Jonah truly hadn't known about the poisoning scheme, but it vanished as soon as he added, "We're about to lose our condo. If you don't help us, we'll be homeless. And the baby." There it was again, the baby card. I stared at him, letting my anger and heartbreak well up. "Jonah," I said, voice shaking, "your mother-in-law tried to poison me for money, and you're still asking for my help. If you had the slightest remorse, you'd step away from all of this. You'd find a legitimate job, make amends by acknowledging how you've wronged me, but you keep pushing for cash." He looked hurt, almost childlike. "Is that a no?" Then he asked, voice bitter. I nodded, steel in my spine. "Absolutely. I won't be your safety net again." He let out a half sob, half laugh, and turned away, muttering curses under his breath as he left. I watched him go, tears stinging my eyes but refusing to fall. Whatever love I still felt for him, it had been eclipsed by a deeper need to protect myself. Later that evening, I found out from Mrs. Porter that Irene's case was heading to trial for attempted poisoning. Jonah and Carla, named as potential accomplices, were warned not to contact me, but something told me they weren't done. Not by a long shot. In the days that followed, the stress took a toll on my health. My blood pressure soared. I found it hard to eat or sleep. So I made a bold decision once the city completed the demolition transaction, putting that $520,000 firmly in my bank. I would leave. Not just Providence, but the entire East Coast. I had friends from my college days who'd retired in Northern California, near the redwood forests. They'd invited me to visit a few times. Now, the idea of starting fresh on the opposite side of the country felt like a lifeline. The demolition payout went through without a hitch. I had the money, free and clear. I arranged for a moving company to ship my furniture to a storage facility until I decided on a permanent place. Then, quietly, I made plans to purchase a cozy cottage in a small Californian town, an hour from my friends. The real estate agent sent me videos of a quaint little house with a wraparound porch, perfect for reading or sipping tea. My heart fluttered with hope. Meanwhile, Jonah and Carla's lives seemed to unravel at breakneck speed. Irene was locked up awaiting her court date. Ça ist. Carla was nearing her third trimester. Their condo was foreclosed upon. Apparently, they'd fallen behind on payments even before Carla got pregnant. I heard rumors that Carla moved in with a cousin, and Jonah hopped between motels. They were in dire straits. Any flicker of pity I felt was doused by the memory of that tampered medication. I had to preserve my sanity and safety. The final confrontation happened 2 nights before I left. Jonah banged on my door at midnight, screaming and cursing. The camera footage showed him sweaty, eyes wild, hair disheveled. "You can't leave me like this. Mom," he shouted, "you owe me. You made me who I am now. You need to fix it." My neighbor called the police. By the time they arrived, Jonah was a sobbing heap on my porch. They escorted him away. Ms. Porter advised me to stay in a hotel until my flight, which I did. I left the next morning, suitcase in hand, tears trickling down my cheeks for the son I once adored but no longer recognized. Stepping off the plane in California felt like shedding 100-pound weight. The crisp air, the rolling mountains in the distance, everything whispered of a second chance. I had chosen this new chapter, free from manipulation and heartbreak. My newly purchased cottage was humble but delightful, with a lush garden waiting to be planted. I unpacked my modest belongings, smiling at the faint echo of hope in the empty rooms. News trickled in from the East Coast. Irene's trial ended with a clear guilty verdict, sentencing her to several years in prison for attempted poisoning. Carla, too, faced legal repercussions. Though more lenient, she'd apparently cooperated with the investigation, claiming she was coerced by her mother's threats. Jonah's situation was murkier. He was unemployed, in debt, and rumored to be living out of his car. Some distant relative mentioned that he and Carla had split, presumably due to the mounting pressure. My heart clenched at the thought of my grandchild. Where would that baby end up? Yet I had no illusions about changing the outcome. I'd done all I could, and they'd chosen a destructive path. One evening, I called my sister Miriam. She reported that Jonah had vanished from social media entirely. "Maybe he'll turn over a new leaf," she said, trying to sound optimistic. I huffed a mirthless laugh, remembering how many times I'd let him back in, only to be burned again. "I hope so," I replied, half-heartedly. But hope was fragile. I had to focus on healing my own wounds. Over the next weeks, I settled into a peaceful rhythm, morning walks along forest trails, coffee with old friends, late nights reading on my porch. My short, layered silver hair grew softer in the mild climate. I even joined a local seniors dance group. Turns out retirement can be filled with laughter and camaraderie when you're not weighed down by emotional extortion. Every now and then, I'd catch a pang of regret. No mother wants to disown her child, but the memories of betrayal, of rummaged drawers and threatening flyers, were still raw. And so, each day, I practiced letting go of Jonah's future, Carla's manipulations, and the dream of a picture-perfect family. One bright morning, I received a letter with a Massachusetts postmark. My heart kicked, wondering if Jonah had found me, but the handwriting was unfamiliar, neat and feminine. Carefully opening it, I discovered it was from Renata, Carla's cousin. She wrote that Carla had given birth to a baby boy, Benjamin, and was living with her. The letter apologized for any stress Carla might have caused me, noting that Carla was recovering from a rough patch. Renata expressed that Benjamin was healthy and sweet, that he deserved grandparents who loved him. She included a small photograph, a chubby baby with wispy hair, dozing in a blue blanket. My eyes stung with tears I hadn't realized were brimming. Renata mentioned that Jonah was nowhere to be found, that Carla seemed bitter about his disappearance. She asked if I might ever want to visit. I spent a long time staring at that letter, the baby photo trembling in my hands. As furious as I'd been, this child was innocent, a new life that didn't ask for any of this. Did I want to remain completely absent? letting Carla's bitterness shape Benjamin's understanding of who I was, or did I risk being sucked back into the chaos? I penned a careful response. I thanked Renata for the update and expressed relief that Benjamin was healthy. I wrote that I had no anger toward the baby, only love from afar. However, I couldn't see a path to normal involvement right now. The wounds were still too deep, the betrayals too fresh. I sent the letter off with a heavy heart, whispering a small blessing for Benjamin's future. If he ever reached out to me someday, once he was old enough to decide for himself, I'd be here with open arms. That afternoon, I took a calming walk among the tall redwoods, letting the sun dapple the forest floor. The hush of the ancient trees felt sacred, reminding me that life endures, regenerates, moves forward. My journey had been painful, rife with betrayal, but I had emerged with my dignity intact and a future still brimming with possibility. Over the next year, I truly began to live again. I transformed my humble cottage into a haven of warmth, crocheted blankets draped over a vintage sofa, watercolor paintings from local artists lining the walls, and a kitchen that smelled of fresh baked bread on Sunday mornings. My daily routine included gentle yoga in the backyard, lunch with the friends I'd made at the dance group, and volunteering at a local community center, tutoring underprivileged kids in math. There, my decades of teaching found a purpose that felt untainted by greed or exploitation. Occasionally, I joined group travel excursions, short bus tours along the coastal highway, a weekend wine tasting retreat in Napa. Each journey reminded me of the wide, beautiful world I'd long neglected in my single-minded devotion to my son. Now, the horizon felt open-ended. Even on days when an old sadness flickered, wondering if Jonah ever turned his life around, I found solace in the knowledge that I had reclaimed mine. One day, while sipping tea on my porch, a notification lit up my phone. It was an unrecognized number, local to Boston. My stomach tensed as I read the text. "This is Jonah. Please don't block me. I need to talk." Part of me felt that familiar pang, the maternal instinct to respond, but I hesitated. I'd been down that road enough times to know his pleas often led to manipulation. My finger hovered over the delete button. Instead, I texted back a single sentence. "What do you need?" Jonah, his response poured in a litany of regrets, references to bouncing between low-paying jobs, disclaimers about how everything had gone wrong once Carla's mother intervened. He asked if I could lend him money for a fresh start. My heart ached with the old wound, yet I typed, "I can't help you financially anymore. I hope you understand." Three dots blinked on the screen for a long time, then vanished. No further reply came. I exhaled a shaky breath. The sadness was there, yes, but so was an overwhelming sense of relief. I'd broken the cycle. I might never have the mother-son relationship I once dreamed of, but at least I'd found the strength to protect myself from further hurt. Despite it all, I still carry love for Jonah in a quiet corner of my heart. Yet love doesn't mean accepting abuse or manipulation. Over these months, I've learned a vital truth. We can love our children, but we don't have to surrender our dignity or our future to them. My life is no longer overshadowed by the fear of being cast as an extra mouth or of having my retirement sold off for someone else's ambition. In time, I created a new will, one that ensures my estate will go to charitable causes, specifically shelters and educational funds for children who actually need support. Jonah will inherit nothing unless he can show me he's changed, and that door is open only if he truly reforms, not by sweet words, but by tangible actions over time. I've left instructions with my lawyer, Ms. Porter, clarifying these conditions. It's my final stand, my quiet message to the child I once nurtured. Your choices have consequences. On sunny afternoons, I sometimes recline on my porch swing, breathing in the scent of pine and sea air. My short, layered silver hair shines in the warm light, and I feel an unspoken gratitude for this second chance at life. My sister Miriam occasionally visits from the East Coast, remarking on how radiant and relaxed I appear. "I've never seen you so at peace," she says, smiling. She's right, I found peace not by ignoring my past, but by surviving it, learning from it, and forging a future that belongs solely to me. If Jonah truly wants redemption, he'll have to earn it. If Carla or her family ever approach me again, they'll have to face the law and my unwavering boundaries. As for baby Benjamin, if he ever comes looking for the grandmother his parents warned him about, I'll be here, arms open, with a scrapbook of memories and a heart full of genuine love, no strings attached. Until then, I rest in the quiet assurance that I did everything I could as a mother, a provider, and a protector. I don't feed extra mouths, not because I'm selfish, but because I finally learned how to feed my own soul. And that, I've discovered, is the greatest surprise of all. Thank you so much for spending your time here at her Fireside Stories today. What an emotional roller coaster filled with betrayal, courage, and ultimate victory. Evelyn's story is a powerful reminder that even when those we love most disappoint us, we can still reclaim our strength and dignity. Did Evelyn's final decision surprise you? Do you think you'd be strong enough to set such firm boundaries with your own family? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It truly supports the channel and helps us bring you more unforgettable stories. Wherever you are, stay safe, stay warm, and I'll see you right here by the fire next time.